There's a certain kind of silence that only exists when someone is pretending everything is fine. Not real silence. Not peaceful, meditative quiet, but a silence that feels performed, like a script missing dialogue. You can hear the forks clink, the fridge hum, the breath catch in their throat before they lie. That was our kitchen for the past 3 weeks. Mallory had started humming again. She only hums when she's guilty. I didn't catch on at first. I just thought she was in a good mood. She was packing her little lunch boxes in the mornings again. Yogurt, almonds, that weird green smoothie sludge she used to swear by, and she wore makeup on Tuesdays now. Always Tuesdays. The same nude lipstick. The same gold necklace with the tiny V-shaped pendant. But I still didn't see it. Not until the trash can told the truth. I wasn't digging, I swear. I just happened to toss out a banana peel before work, and there it was, on top of the trash like it wanted to be seen. A receipt. From a rooftop steakhouse. 2 people. 2 cocktails. 1 creme brulee, which she said was disgusting last time I ordered it on our anniversary. The date? Tuesday. The time? 7:32 p.m. That was yoga night. The night she said her phone died, and she fell asleep early after hot flow. I stared at that receipt like it had punched me in the stomach. Every tiny print of it. Thank you, come again. Felt like a slap. She was cheating. I knew it. But I didn't rage. I didn't yell. I took a photo of the receipt. Then I folded it neatly and tucked it into the back of my wallet. I finished my banana, brushed my teeth, and drove to work like a good little robot. All day, I played it out in my head. The confrontation, the crying, the apologies that meant nothing, the fake confessions hiding the worst ones. And by 3 p.m., I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to fix it. I didn't want to scream. I didn't even want to know who he was. I wanted to disappear. Not die, don't get dramatic, but vanish. Ghost my life. Leave it like an unpaid tab in a bar I never wanted to drink in. So I opened a browser tab. I typed in, flights to anywhere. First result, Bucharest, Romania. $238 one-way. I booked it without even checking the airline. I got home that night and kissed her cheek like nothing had happened. She smiled smug, still humming. Said she had plans tomorrow night with her yoga girls. I nodded. The next day, she left in her sports bra and ponytail, pretending she was going to sweat and stretch and find her breath. 30 minutes later, I was in a taxi to the airport, holding nothing but a backpack, a laptop, my wallet, and that receipt. She went on her date. I left the country. And that is when things started to get really weird. When the plane took off, I expected to feel something. Fear, freedom, maybe even guilt. But instead, I felt numb. Like my body was moving, but my brain had stayed behind, still sitting in that kitchen, staring at the receipt. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stared out the window while the clouds swallowed the city I used to call home. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Not my boss, not my parents, not even my best friend Nolan, the one guy who might have talked me out of it. My job would probably think I was dead within a week. I didn't care. Let them wonder. I was tired of being predictable. The flight was quiet, too quiet. A man 2 rows ahead coughed every few minutes. A baby let out the occasional whimper, but otherwise, it felt like I was in some kind of suspended reality. Like I'd accidentally walked into a life that didn't belong to me. And maybe I had. We landed in Bucharest around 10 a.m. local time. I had never seen the place except on travel blogs and spy thrillers. Gray skies, cold air, foreign words. It was perfect. No one knew my name. No one expected anything from me. I could walk into traffic and disappear forever. For the first time in years, I belonged nowhere. I checked into a cheap hotel using cash, then spent 20 minutes in the shower just staring at the wall. My wedding ring was still on. I hadn't even thought to take it off. It felt like dead weight on my finger. I yanked it off and dropped it in the sink, where it clanged louder than I expected, like even the metal was mocking me. Then I turned my phone back on. It exploded. 28 missed calls, 11 voicemails, dozens of texts, but only one message mattered. It was from Mallory, and it wasn't what I expected. You're being insane. This was just a dinner. You don't get to vanish like a coward. No apology. No explanation. Just blame. Just defense. I didn't even respond. I just stared at the screen, wondering how someone could cheat on you, lie about it, and still feel like the victim. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, not from pain, but from humiliation. And then it got worse. She sent another message. Also, you left your laptop unlocked. You're going to regret this. I swear to God, my heart actually skipped. Not because of fear, but because of rage. She was in our house, going through my stuff, invading the last little corner of my privacy like it belonged to her. And the worst part? I didn't even know what she was looking for. My emails, my drafts, my travel info. I had nothing to hide, but she had everything to lose. And still, she acted like I was the one who had betrayed her. I turned the phone off again. That night, I sat in a pub with peeling wallpaper and a cracked mirror behind the bar. A man next to me smoked like the 1980s never ended. I didn't know the language, didn't care what I was drinking, but I felt still. And in that stillness, an idea formed. Mallory thought I ran away, that I was weak, that I'd just vanish, lick my wounds, and maybe crawl back one day, embarrassed and forgiving. She had no idea I was just getting started. If she wanted to play games, I'd build the board, because I didn't just come here to escape her. I came here to make sure she'd never forget what she lost. The next morning, I sat on the edge of a creaky hotel bed in a country where I didn't speak the language, staring at my useless phone and the cracked ceiling like they owed me answers. I hadn't slept. I didn't feel tired, though. I felt wired, like someone had plugged my spine into a generator made of rage and betrayal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smirking in that stupid text. You're going to regret this. She thought I ran because I was scared, because I was weak, because I was the same Delbert who used to apologize when she forgot things, who used to stay up Googling how to make your wife fall in love with you again like a lovesick idiot. She thought I'd come crawling back with some limp excuse, ready to accept whatever half-truths she'd offer. But here's the thing. I didn't fly to Romania to escape. I flew here because I needed to become someone else. So I got to work. I found a quiet coffee shop with cracked wooden tables and bad jazz playing through the ceiling. I ordered something I couldn't pronounce and opened my laptop. Yes, my backup laptop. The one she didn't know about. I had bought it years ago when she complained that I spent too much time writing things no one would ever read. I kept it buried in a box in the garage like it was shameful. But now, it was my weapon. I started writing. Not a letter, not a blog post, not a revenge fantasy. A list. A list of things she cared about. Not the usual things like family or career. No, I mean the things that defined her ego. Her social image. Her reputation. Her little secrets. Her curated Instagram account where every photo was edited for 2 hours before posting. Her fake job title on LinkedIn that made it sound like she was a corporate executive instead of a glorified PR assistant. Her side hustle that she never told her employer about and technically violated her contract. Her professional email address that redirected everything to a personal inbox where she badmouthed colleagues. And the one thing she was most afraid of, a scandal involving her married boss, who she swore was just a mentor. Yeah, I knew things. And no, I wasn't going to post anything. I wasn't going to hack her or destroy her career. That would be too easy, too dramatic, too obvious. No, my plan was slower, smarter, legal. I wanted her to sweat, not burn. I wanted her to spiral. So I built a digital ghost, a fake LinkedIn profile, a new email, a VPN. I named him Rhett Caulfield. I gave him a believable resume and a vague consulting title. I had him connect with all her coworkers and her boss. Within 24 hours, half her company had added him. Rhett was charming, professional, and invisible. Next, I scheduled 3 anonymous emails. The first one to her boss's wife, attaching 2 photos Mallory had accidentally synced to our shared cloud a year ago. Nothing X-rated, but compromising enough. The kind of pictures that make people start asking questions. The second email to HR at her company. It simply contained a screenshot of her side business's logo, with a note. Does your PR team usually moonlight for competitors? And the third? To Mallory herself. It said, you lied to the wrong person. Enjoy the show. No name. No threats. Just that. I sent the emails, closed the laptop, walked out into the cold Bucharest air, and smiled for the first time in what felt like years. She thought I was running away, but I wasn't hiding. I was watching. 3 days into my stay in Bucharest, I was sitting on the hotel balcony drinking instant coffee that tasted like burnt regret when I got the first sign that the web I'd spun was beginning to tighten. It came in the form of a single email sent from my burner account to my real one, with a subject line that read, discrepancy, in professional affiliation. Attached was a forwarded internal message, something someone inside Mallory's company had clearly leaked. It was a thread from HR: cold. Clinical. Please be advised that we are reviewing a potential conflict of interest involving an employee conducting business activities that may interfere with contractual obligations. There it was. The crack. The first one. I closed the email and leaned back in my chair, letting the morning air hit my face. I felt nothing. No thrill, no rush of power. Just quiet satisfaction, like when you finally remove a splinter that's been festering for years. I didn't smile. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was exposure. Mallory had lived a life stitched together with half-truths and curated performances, and all I did was turn on the spotlight. That evening, I took a walk through the old city. Cobblestone streets. Streetlights flickering like something out of a noir film. I didn't blend in. I didn't try to. I wasn't there to become a local. I was a ghost with a purpose. When I got back to my room, I found a new message on my personal phone. One I'd turned on just for the hell of it. Like a man peeking through a window, he swore he'd boarded up. It was a voicemail. Mallory's voice, shaken, strained, and for the first time in a long time, unsure. Del, I don't know what's going on, but something weird is happening at work. Did you? No, forget it. Look, I know you're angry. I deserve it. But please don't ruin my life. You're better than that, right? No tears. No remorse. Just panic wrapped in performance. The same tone she used when she got pulled over for speeding and thought she could smile her way out of it. But now there was no badge to flirt with. No script to follow. And that terrified her. I replayed the voicemail once. Then I deleted it. That night, I finally slept. Not long, but deeply. The kind of sleep that only comes after years of pretending things were fine. The next morning, I woke up to something even better. Confirmation that Rhett Caulfield was now a trusted connection on her boss's private LinkedIn profile. I laughed out loud, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from myself in maybe 6 years. She didn't know Rhett was watching, didn't realize he was already being CC'd in group invites. She just knew that things were falling apart, and she couldn't trace the thread back to me. But the real gem came 2 days later. A new number texted my burner phone with 3 words. We need to talk. It was her boss. Not Mallory, her married boss. The one she swore barely knew her outside of work. The same man who once sent her a necklace that she claimed she bought for herself as a treat. He was sweating now. I didn't reply. I never intended to. I only saved the message as a trophy. I spent the afternoon people watching in a square surrounded by crumbling buildings and chain-smoking college students. It was beautiful in a strange, crooked way. There was a violinist playing something that sounded like grief, and I realized for the first time I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt awake. Mallory had always underestimated me. She saw me as safe, dull, unthreatening. The IT husband who folded laundry and paid bills and didn't ask questions. The man who planned anniversary dinners that she canceled for emergency meetings. But now she was learning the truth. Not all quiet men are weak. Some of us are just patient. And patience, when pushed far enough, becomes strategy. I returned to my hotel, opened my laptop, and began writing again. Not to her. Not to anyone. Just notes. Observations. Patterns. I wasn't done. I hadn't even started. Because while her world was beginning to crack, I was building something new. Something she'd never be able to erase. By the end of the first week, I could practically feel her unraveling from across the ocean. You might think I'm exaggerating, but when you've lived with someone long enough, you know the rhythm of their lies. Mallory had always been slick, rehearsed, the kind of person who could gaslight you into doubting your own birthday. But desperation doesn't wear a mask for long, and hers was already slipping. The proof came in the form of an email I received on my burner account, addressed to Rhett Caulfield. Yes, the fake consultant I had invented was now living rent-free in her boss's circle of trust. The subject line was painfully simple. Urgent. Can we meet? The body of the message wasn't much better. A frantic jumble of sentences about rumors spreading, someone watching us, and damage control. He was crumbling. And if her boss was cracking under the pressure, then I knew Mallory was, too. I didn't respond. I never intended to. The point wasn't to confront them. It was to let the silence haunt them. Silence is louder than threats. Silence makes people invent their own worst endings. I simply saved the email in a folder I'd titled Collection. Each message, Each voicemail, each slip was becoming part of something bigger, though at the time I couldn't fully explain what. All I knew was that for once in my life, I wasn't the one on the defensive. Then, late one night in Bucharest, as I sat in a smoky little bar trying to blend in with strangers, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her boss. It was Mallory. Not angry, not smug, but sweet. The kind of sweet that makes your stomach turn. "Delbert," she wrote. "I know you're upset. I know I messed up. But please come home and we can talk about this like adults. I'll even cook your favorite. I just need you back." For a moment, I almost laughed. She hadn't cooked a real meal for me in years. Half the time, she couldn't even boil water without burning it. But there she was, dangling a fake olive branch, dressed up in lipstick and nostalgia. It was bait. Plain and simple. She didn't miss me. She missed control. She missed the quiet, obedient husband who swallowed her excuses and kept the bills paid while she lived her double life. I didn't reply. Instead, I ordered another drink and let the bartender's broken English wash over me like white noise. I thought about how predictable she'd become. Mallory only played two roles, the untouchable queen and the damsel in distress. Now that her kingdom was cracking, she'd switched to damsel, hoping I'd swoop back in. But I wasn't coming back with flowers and apologies. I was watching from afar, letting her tower collapse brick by brick. The next morning, though, she raised the stakes. I woke up to a video call request. She never called. Not once since I left. I didn't answer, but I watched the voicemail she left afterward. She was sitting in our kitchen, hair undone, mascara smudged, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Please," she whispered. "I don't know what's happening. They're saying things at work, and my boss won't even look me in the eye anymore. I know you're angry, but if you're doing this, stop. Just stop. You win, okay? You win." That was the first time I'd ever heard her say those words to me. You win. And it hit me in a way I didn't expect. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. But instead, it made me realize something far colder. This wasn't about winning anymore. Winning would mean going home, reclaiming my spot beside her, wearing my little crown while she pretended to be loyal. No, I didn't want that. I didn't want her back. I didn't even want revenge anymore. I wanted distance. I wanted her voice to become nothing more than static in a memory. I wanted her to remember me not as the man who forgave her, but as the man who walked out without hesitation and never gave her closure. So I shut the phone off again, slid the wedding ring deeper into the bottom of my bag, and went out into the streets. Bucharest was waking up, the air sharp and cold, the city buzzing with a language I couldn't understand. But I didn't need to understand it. I just needed to keep walking. For the first time in years, every step I took wasn't toward her. It was away. And as I turned the corner past a bookshop and a group of students laughing on the sidewalk, I realized something that chilled me more than her betrayal ever did. She wasn't finished yet. Mallory was many things, but she wasn't the type to let go. She was going to make one last desperate move, the kind of move that could drag me back whether I liked it or not. And I knew, deep down, it was coming soon. I should have known she wouldn't stay quiet. Mallory was never the type to let anything go without a fight, not even an argument over which brand of cereal we bought. So when I shut my phone down and tried to move on with my life in a city where no one knew my name, I thought maybe I'd bought myself peace. For a while I did. I spent my mornings wandering cobblestone streets, my afternoons in dim coffee shops pretending to write, and my nights half drunk on cheap wine, convincing myself I was free. But freedom never comes that easily, especially when the person you left behind is a storm disguised as a woman. Her last move came on a Tuesday, exactly 2 weeks after I had left. I had decided to check my email, not my burner, but the one attached to my real name, the one I swore I'd abandoned but couldn't quite cut loose. I wish I hadn't. Waiting for me in that inbox were 3 unread messages, all with the same subject line. You can't hide forever. The first was from her, Mallory. She'd written an essay disguised as an apology, the kind of letter people might mistake for sincerity if they hadn't lived with her lies as long as I had. She spoke of love and confusion and working through this together. But hidden between the flowery words was the same poison as always, control. She wrote that she was willing to forgive me for abandoning her, as if her betrayal was somehow eclipsed by my escape. She ended it with, "Please come home before things get worse." The second email was different. It was from her lawyer. cold, professional, and deliberate. According to him, Mallory was preparing to file for divorce and intended to claim emotional abandonment as grounds. She wanted everything: the house, the car, and even my retirement account. She was building a case that I was unstable, reckless, and incapable of providing stability. The irony nearly made me choke on the bitter coffee I was drinking at the time. She had been sneaking around with another man for months, but somehow I was the unfit one. And then came the third message. That one wasn't from her or her lawyer. It was anonymous. No name, no signature, no return address. Just a single line of text. She's not finished with you. I must have read that sentence 50 times. It didn't sound like her, too stripped down, too raw. But it chilled me. Someone else was involved. Either she dragged her mysterious TM into this, or someone close to her wanted to warn me. The possibilities twisted in my brain until I felt sick. I spent the rest of that day walking through the city, ignoring the way the clouds threatened rain. I replayed everything over and over. Her false apology, her lawyer's threats, the anonymous warning. Was this the desperate move I'd been waiting for? Or was it just the opening act? Mallory was manipulative enough to dangle all three in front of me at once, forcing me to respond, forcing me to acknowledge her. That was her specialty. She couldn't stand being ignored. But here's the thing. The more she clawed at me, the more certain I became that I would never go back. Her emails weren't pulling me home. They were pushing me further away. For the first time in years, I wasn't bending, wasn't apologizing, wasn't trying to fix something broken. I was watching her squirm, and I realized that was the greatest revenge of all: silence. That night, I sat by the window of my hotel, rain streaking the glass, and I opened a new document on my laptop. At the top of the page, I typed Mallory's last act. I didn't know what I was going to write under it yet, but I had the sense that the next step was coming fast. She had already tried sweet words, legal threats, and mysterious warnings. If those didn't work, she'd reach for something bigger, something reckless, something that would finally show the world who she really was. I closed the laptop, finished the bottle of wine at my bedside, and whispered into the empty room. Come on, Mallory. Show me what you've got. And as if the universe had been listening, I woke up the next morning to find that she had. I should have known she would pick something big and bright. Mallory loved spotlights the way moths loved flames. It wasn't enough for her to whisper accusations in the dark. She needed a stage and an audience that would clap when she took a bow. What she chose was predictable in the purest sense: the company gala. Over the years, she'd worshipped those evenings: the velvet, the hors d'oeuvres, the photos that would later be cropped, filtered, and commodified into a version of herself she preferred. She wanted humiliation dressed up as spectacle, and she wanted me to be the tragic centerpiece. I learned about it the only way I could now, watching from a rented apartment in a city 3 time zones away while my burner email pinged like a nervous insect. An anonymous tip landed in my inbox with a link to a live stream. Mallory had arranged a public talk at the gala. A speech, she said, about boundaries and trust in modern relationships. It was performative martyrdom, a speech that would end with her dramatic reveal of my alleged abandonment and how she was bravely moving on. The whole thing was set to be broadcast to colleagues, friends, and the one audience she trusted more than anyone else: herself. I felt something that I hadn't felt before, amusement edged with a cold clarity. She was going to make the world watch her narrative implode in real time. That was her plan, and, true to form, she had executed it down to the glitter. The stream started. Cameras panned over crystal chandeliers and smiling faces. Mallory rose to speak, immaculate in a dress that could have bankrupted a lesser woman. And for the first few minutes, she was the trained actor she'd always been. Measured cadence, a practiced vulnerability, perfectly placed pauses. People nodded. People laughed at the jokes she thought were endearing. Then she reached for the part she'd rehearsed in the privacy of our bathroom mirror: the reveal. She began to speak my name. That's when the room changed. Phones lifted like a flock of birds. The camera focused. Mallory's voice swelled. She told the story she wanted everyone to believe. The coward husband who fled instead of confronting his mistakes. The villain of a domestic movie. She said it with conviction. People who'd applauded her a half hour ago leaned forward, hungry. And then, like a stone in still water, my careful plan. The slow, surgical unraveling I'd planted made itself known. A notification thread that she didn't expect flashed across the room. Screenshots, forwarded emails, and a single, clinical slideshow that HR mysteriously queued up on the gala's presentation screen. The slideshow was anonymized, but the implications were unmistakable. Side business contracts, messages confirming meetings, receipts from restaurants that matched the dates she'd lied about. The crowd watched as the neat little house of Mallory's curated life splintered, piece by public piece. I had not sent anything to the gala. I had no intention of showing up. But the web I'd woven had hooks in places she'd never thought to check. Someone, perhaps Rhett, perhaps the anxious colleague who'd finally had enough, pushed the right button at the right time. Mallory choked on a syllable. Her composure cracked like a windshield. The air in the room thickened with the delicious, terrible sound of surprise. People looked at her with a new sort of hunger, curiosity mixed with betrayal. Her boss, the man who had sent her the necklace, turned white as a sheet. A dozen phones recorded the whole thing. The gala's live feed split into 1,000 shards. I watched the stream with my hands on my knees until they ached. She didn't attack me online. She attacked the evidence. She accused it of being fake, of being a conspiracy, of being a mean joke orchestrated by jealous coworkers. She laughed too loud and too sharp, and in doing so she confirmed the fracture the slideshow had exposed. People began to whisper. Someone from HR stepped up to the stage and said, in calm tones, that the company would be opening an immediate inquiry. That sentence, immediate inquiry, was the kind of legal rain that starts as a drizzle and ends up flooding lives. After the initial shock, the fallout arrived with a velocity that took my breath away. Her boss called an emergency meeting the next morning. Her LinkedIn connections began to thin. Invitations she'd been expecting vanished. The necklace? Returned. The lawyer's threats? Suddenly quieter, the tone shifting from confident to defensive. Mallory posted a defensive thread that read like a wounded animal's whine. People who once smiled in the same frame as her began to distance themselves in real time. She tried to rally support among friends and family, but the evidence traveled faster than her explanations. Watching her unspool in public should have felt like a final act of justice. Instead, it felt messy in ways I hadn't predicted. The internet can be cruel and also banal. It reduced a complicated, intimate betrayal to headlines, clips, and trending tags. There was no grand closure, only incremental erasure. I saw the gleam leave her eyes in the grainy video uploads, and for a moment I recognized instead the human cost of spectacle, not for me, but for the person who'd once shared my bed and my bank account. Then, as if to remind me the world rarely cares about moral neatness, an envelope arrived at my hotel the following morning. There was no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. Mallory, backstage at the gala, staring into the dressing room mirror, mascara smudged, mouth open in a half-formed gasp. On the back, in neat handwriting, were 3 words, "You're not safe." Who sent it? Rhett? Her boss's wife? A colleague? I didn't know. All I knew was that the game had shifted. She had lost the gala, yes, but someone else had decided to turn this into something more than a private collapse. The last move she thought she controlled had become a public spectacle with new players, and now, for the first time since I left, I felt watched again. The morning after the gala implosion, the city felt different. The same cafe I had been visiting for weeks suddenly smelled brighter, the voices warmer, the light softer. It wasn't the world that changed, it was me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without someone controlling the air around me. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. I wasn't even thinking about Mallory. I was thinking about me. The man who had once lived in silence, surrounded by manipulation disguised as affection, had finally found his voice, not to shout, but to simply live without fear. I didn't respond to the emails. Not even the last one she sent 2 nights after the gala, the one that read, "I'm sorry, not for what you think, but for never really seeing you." It was her final performance. A note left on a stage she'd already burned down. I deleted it without opening the attachment. That same day, I found myself wandering into a bookstore tucked between 2 shuttered shops. It was small, dusty, and beautiful. The man behind the counter didn't speak English, but he handed me a journal with a leather cover and smiled like he understood exactly what I needed. I bought it. I started writing, not about her, not about the betrayal, but about Bucharest. The sounds, the people, the strange feeling of freedom in a place where I had no history. I filled 3 pages before I even realized I was smiling. I got a job offer from a local co-working space. Freelance tech support, flexible hours, no expectations beyond doing my job. I took it. I started helping a group of university students with their startup idea. Nothing flashy, just a budgeting app for international students. But they treated me with respect I hadn't felt in years. They didn't know my past. They didn't care. I was just Del, quiet, competent, showing up on time, never asking for anything I hadn't earned. Weeks passed, then months. And one day, it just happened. I stopped checking my phone for updates about her. The court documents eventually arrived. The divorce was finalized. I didn't contest it. She got the house. I let her have it. I didn't want a place that held echoes of silence, sharp glances, or lipstick on someone else's collar. I chose peace. And peace, I found, is a country where you don't need to explain yourself to anyone. I moved out of the hotel and into a modest flat above a bakery. Every morning, the smell of bread woke me up before the sun. I made friends, a few. Enough. One of them was a painter named Irina who had eyes like wet stone and a laugh that made people turn their heads in restaurants. We never talked about exes. We just talked about music, travel, food, and sometimes nothing at all. It was enough. I didn't rebuild my life. That implies I tried to make it look like the old one. I started a new one. With no blueprint, no expectations, no apologies. And every now and then, I'd see couples arguing on the street or hear someone at the cafe complain about how he never listens, and I'd feel something between sorrow and gratitude. Mallory went on her date, and I left the country. But the real story isn't the damage she did. It's the man I became because of it. This isn't a tragedy. It's a release. A quiet, powerful reminder that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away and keep walking until you don't need to look back anymore.